welcome to the Good Girl Confessional podcast. I'm your host, Sandy Lowres, and the Good Girl Confessional podcast is part of our amazing award-winning platform, WB40, Women Beyond 40, a platform and magazine for women 40, 50, 60 and beyond who want to talk about grown-up stuff and stuff that should no longer be taboo. I am super excited today because I also have to mention that this is our 100th episode of the Good Girl Confessional podcast. I cannot believe it. I'm so grateful to everyone who listens along and who shares and likes and leaves a review, because in doing so it helps us as an independent platform to reach so many other people. Before I jump in and introduce our special guest today, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this podcast has been recorded. It is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and I would like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Today in the confessional, super excited to join me for number 100 is the delightful, brave, and brilliant Kayte Murphy. Kayte Murphy, of course, has been a powerhouse in terms of Australian bloggers. She was one of the originals. She wrote under the name of Mrs Woog with her blog, Woog's World. She still has an extraordinarily huge community of people who follow along, and we'll put in those links in the notes. She has been a podcaster and headed up an incredibly successful podcast called The Hot Flush. And she is now starting a new chapter in her life, talking about her story in regards to alcohol and how this affected and impacted her life, and a new chapter of becoming the artist currently known as Kayte Murphy. Please welcome her to the confessional, Kayte.
Hey there! When Sandy's not interviewing kick-ass women, she's hanging out with me at Alex the Seal, a podcast about music and nostalgia. I'm Jo Pybus, and each episode, Sandy and I talk about all the songs that got us hooked up, knocked up, and broken up. Do yourself a favour and search Alex the Seal on your podcast app. Love you, Molly!
Hello, beautiful Kayte, and welcome to the confessional once again. How are you?
So good to be here, Sandy. Thank you for having me. I've been looking over the calibre of your guests. I'm not quite sure whether I stack up, but I'll give it a red hot crack.
Look, you absolutely bloody stack up, and you are amongst some of those women who've already been on here, so thank you. Last time you were here, we were busy talking about all things menopause. Of course we were, because you were with the
I do miss it. We just ran out of words, you know. We just got to a point that we had told all our stories, and you know, I think that there's a possibility that it could come back. I'm hoping that it could come back, even just for just a catch up, because we do miss that community, and there was a lot of pain going on, but there was also a lot of laughs, so I miss that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the chemistry that you and beautiful Kim had is pretty extraordinary.
And we just had such a bloody rough 12 months, both of us. So, I mean, I can't really speak for her a lot, but, you know, some just monumental changes have been happening. And I think that's also probably a good thing to talk about at some point as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I guess, you know, this is why, you know, I'm thrilled that you've come back on to have a bit of a chat, because one thing I love about you and have always loved about you is your extraordinary honesty about everything that's going on in your life. And I think that kind of guts and courage and that honesty really then helps other people to face what's going on in their life and think I'm not alone.
Well, I mean, I think so. And that word authenticity gets bandied around, and like if you show a picture of your guts hanging out with some stretch marks, you're labeled authentic, and that's just really on the outside. I also think you get to a point, it's just exhausting trying to pretend to be anything else. And I just don't have the bandwidth to be able to do it. I tried for a long time, didn't get me anywhere. And I can't be bothered. I just can't be bothered. And it's take it or leave it now. And that's been a really great thing to grow into as well.
I love it, and I think that like if more of us started to do that, and you're right. I know the word authenticity, because it does get bantered around, probably gets a bit of a bad rap at times, but I think it's really ballsy to or I like to say breasty to to actually genuinely be authentic, especially in a really public
Yeah.
domain. It just
I
is.
think also because, my fucking journey, fuck, I hate that word, was so organic from this. I didn't, and I started out blogging 13, 14 years ago. And like none of this had a plan. None of what I've been doing had a plan. And had I had a plan, it wouldn't have been this one, let me tell you, Sandy. It would not have gone according to plan at all.
Oh, I tell you what, a lot of people always say you always end up where you're meant to be, but you go, really, I could have done without half the crap
I
along the way.
honestly sound like I could give myself a punch in the face, but I would not change a thing. I would not change a thing. I really wouldn't, because oh my God, I hate myself, but I wouldn't be where I am now. And people, I know, I can see people cringing, and I am one of those people. I'm cringing at me too. But it's true that I have just such a different life to what I had 12 months ago, in absolutely every aspect of it. So, I mean, I don't mind sharing my story, because I think coming from where I've come from and knowing so many women are where I was, I know this because I get emails every day, to take some of the scariness away from it, to know that, if you do the work, then life is beautiful. It really is. Oh, God, punch.
No, don't. You know what, though? I think that this is one of the things, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. One of the things as women that we do, right, is that we actually say something that's really profound, and then we backtrack it and go, I'm an idiot. We shouldn't have said that. It's this whole imposter syndrome shit that goes on with women, right, especially women as we get older. And it just, no, you don't deserve a punch in the face. You deserve a bloody hug and you just do. It's and a high five.
The other thing, Sandy, is that we're just so trained from our first breath to be very hard on ourselves. I was hard on myself. Like, I was unforgivingly nasty to myself. And my spiral into the depths of despair was nobody's doing but my own, really, because I was so hard on myself.
Yeah, but that takes, as you say, we're trained from a really young age.
Quiet.
As women, young girls, be quiet. This is the whole name of this podcast, the Good Girl Confessional, is a very tongue-in-cheek look at that, of be good.
Don't upset anyone.
Be quiet. Be a people pleaser. Be small.
And just being always very cautious of your actions and what people might think. I think once you can let go of that, that's when the change starts to really happen. It really does.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that 100%. But I want to go back right now. For people who don't know who you are, I find it really difficult that women wouldn't know who you are, but you never know. But we do have a lot of international listeners here, so you don't know. There might be people out there who've not. But
bonjour. I walked into a restaurant the other day, a French restaurant, and I've walked in and I've gone, oh, bonjour, and all the staff looked at me and then started speaking to me in French, and they were so happy, and I was like, oh no, that's it, that's all.
That's all I've got.
Now
that's
be Bogan Aussie. Thank you very much.
That's how I go. That's what we've got. Fromage. That's my entire French there. Croissant. Yeah, that's true. Look at us speaking French.
Formidable.
French is.
Okay, what was your question?
I wanted to go back to the beginning, right? When I say the beginning, I'm not talking about, when Kate was born. I'm talking about when Mrs Woog was born, basically, because Kate, you are one of Australia's most influential bloggers. That would be true, and one of the original bloggers that started out, as you say, about 14 odd years ago. Tell us how you got started in the world of blogging and how you came up with Mrs Woog from Woog's World.
It's actually pronounced Woog.
Woog. I keep saying Woogs. I
Everyone
always
says
say
Woogs.
Woogs, even when I spoke to you last
You know,
time.
ironically, it's not my name. It's not my name.
I know. Well, let's talk about Mrs
Okay,
Woog
so
from
we'll
Woog
take it
Girl.
back to what 17 years ago. I was working as a publishing executive. I had a toddler, and I just had my second child, and he was diagnosed with being deaf when he was like a day old. So, and that sort of like was cataclysmically just because I didn't know anything about deafness. I thought you were deaf or you weren't. Um, but what I did know is that I couldn't give him 100% and get him up and running without being really full time with him. So I quit my job, and we were doing a lot of work with the Shepherd Centre, which is a charity in New South Wales. I think there might be Australia wide. And it was around that time that the movie Julie and Julia came out. Julie and Julia. And
Yep.
it's about Julia Child's cookbook and the blogger from New York. It's based on a true story, and she decided to do something called blogging. She was going to blog a recipe every day. And I thought, oh, you know, I'd always liked writing, and I'd written here and there, and I thought I could do, like, that would give me something, you know, to focus on, like a little project. So I didn't want to be known. Like, I never wanted anyone to find out. I just wanted to do it for me. And so I decided to take my husband's surname because I thought that was really clever. And I called it Woog's World as a nod to Wayne's World, which is a movie that I loved. Yeah, really showing my sensibilities here, Sandy. And then I just wrote on it every day. Just wrote little anecdotes, little snippets. Sometimes it was 5 sentences, sometimes it was a yarn. And I didn't think anything of it because, like, it was really, really new. And then someone reached out to me, and then I got a comment. But then it's sort of organic because what I didn't do is I didn't set it to private. Right. So you already had a taste for the fact that I'm no good with technology, right? And all of a sudden, and then Google picked it up. I don't know how, and it was Blog of Note, and then it just went mental from there. And then the Australian blogging scene started to grow. So I connected with some really great mates who I'm still friends with, Beth and Nikki. And yeah, it just sort of went from there. And it wasn't, as I said, it wasn't a plan. Years down the track, when it became an industry, a lot of people were joining up and sort of getting us in to talk to companies and things like that about how to be a blogger. And I didn't know how to be a blogger. It was just writing to me. So I think going back to that whole not a plan, I didn't have a niche. I didn't have an angle. It was just a really pure personal blogger. And that's how it started. And I stopped last year again. I just ran out of words and I had to sing a new song. But I did do it for a long time, and it took me to places around the world. I was able to publish a book. I was able to do television and radio, you know, things that I would never have thought that, you know, and it was during this time that a lot of my imposter syndrome started to creep in, which was sort of the beginning of a lot of my problems. Sorry, I do have my dogs here, and a bird just walked in the back door.
That's okay. I've got dogs here too, so you know, they're just part of our family,
Yeah,
aren't they?
exactly.
Yeah. I think what's amazing to me is that you influenced so many other women to start writing, to start blogging.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was amongst those women. And of course, I started the Good Girl Confessional way back when, about 2013, as a blog initially. And, but of course, mine was nothing to do with family and everything to do with sex, dating, and
Much
and
more
being
interesting.
single in your 40s at a time when no one was really talking about that stuff. So I wrote under a pseudonym originally, which was The Good Girl. And I, you know, obviously she's grown up now to become a podcast, but I often think about yourself. And as you say, there are other bloggers that I was really influenced by at the time. You know?
Well, you just get really invested in people's stories, and you know, I don't really like the word influence because I like to think that people who were reading my stuff had their own brain. They knew what they were doing. Do you know what I mean? And if you're listening to me and taking advice from me, like, and that was my catch cry, like this is just me. This is my story, and what I'm saying, does or does not work for me. But yeah, it wasn't ever about being the best or being the most sort of, that was actually the part I didn't enjoy, I think.
Yeah, I think that was, when I say influence, I mean that you allowed or gave other women the idea that, oh, maybe I can write my story. Maybe I can go down that path and start a blog. What the hell's a blog, right?
And I think the biggest joy that, on reflection of it now, and it was a really exciting time. And, I had dinner with the Prime Minister. I was doing all sorts of shit. I went to Fashion Week, if you don't mind. Looked so stupid. I wore ballet flats and a tube skirt. Anyway, but I think that if I could look back on it and think that the most important thing I got out of it was to be the conversation starter and to provide a platform for those conversations to happen, and to become a place where people, one of the things I've learned in the last year about doing some serious therapy is about just the importance of connection. And I think that internet connection provided a lot of that support to a lot of women who might have been isolated.
Yeah.
For whatever
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's, there's no denying that COVID and the lockdown and everything was hugely difficult for so many people. But in a lot of ways too, I've spoken to a lot of women who said it actually opened up their world in a way.
Yeah.
Because they suddenly became part of internet groups where, and they're in Zoom meetings or in there and chatting with people they never would have met before in their life. And you kind of realize, as you say, it reminded us in some ways that the world was very small.
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
We were all in it together, right?
Mm.
So let's talk about that, though, because a lot happened since you started blogging. So many things have gone on in your life. And as you say, you've been on television, you've met Prime Minister, you've done all these amazing things. You were also a podcaster, and hence why, last time we chatted, you were still recording a podcast called The Hot Flush and talking about all things menopause, which was amazing, with your co-host, Kim. And, that was a kind of really amazing time as well, because I think for a lot of women to hear a podcast that was 100% dedicated to your experiences of going through perimenopause and what is perimenopause and why aren't more people talking about it.
Yeah, I think that we were the first podcast signed to Wooshka. They approached us and we were like, yeah, we'll have a go. I didn't never heard what's a podcast. And then it was just a general podcast. And I said, Kim, I think that we could really do something, because we had an audience straight away because we both came from that blogging background. And we were both sort of going through this really weird stage known as, and I never knew what it was called. It was perimenopause. And but at that stage, a lot of people didn't know. I think a lot of people are getting so educated now. I see programs going into workplaces and things like this. Menopause was a taboo subject. Like, what the fuck is that? A taboo subject? Like, why? Why is that a taboo? Anyway, so there was a lot of work to be done. And then we were looking at the women in their early 40s who were going through these changes, and we were them as well. And we were like, what the fuck is going on? Why are my periods all of a sudden just gushing? Like, why do I want to kill people? Why am I crying all the time? Where is this temper? Like, I was like the lizard queen, and she was the same. And then we're like, God, but there must be other people. Oh, didn't we open those floodgates? There were a lot of other women. And the scary thing was, as we sort of, we went on SBS and talked about it. We spoke with gynecologists and psychologists, and we were talking to lots of women. The scary thing about this was costing women their lives.
Yeah.
This was actually driving a lot of people to taking their own lives, and huge big bouts of depression and substance abuse problems and, divorce. I mean, it's just such a time in women's lives where your kids are leaving, where your marriage has fallen apart because your dickhead husband has gone and fucked his secretary. Apparently, not mine, but it has happened to quite a few friends of mine. Honestly, your parents are getting older, everything, but no one tells you that this is coming? Like, why didn't our mums tell us this was going to happen? Because they're all stoic and they're all, stiff upper lip. And I don't know whether that's a good thing because they didn't fucking tell us.
No, I agree. And I've said this a lot of times. So obviously I started Women Beyond 40 magazine platform and we shout it from the rooftops.
Yeah.
I bang on about perimenopause and menopause as often as I can and encourage everybody else to do so. I was saying how my mum was this little disabled left-wing feminist, little pocket rocket, who talked about, like I used to be so embarrassed as a teenager because she'd be talking about quite openly about sex and periods and all these things that no one else's mothers were apparently talking about. But the one thing she didn't discuss with me was menopause. She just didn't. And I wonder if her experience was different because she had a hysterectomy at quite a young age. She had 5 kids really early and then had a hysterectomy. And I wonder then if her experience was different, but it would have been bloody nice. But mum's passed away now, so I can't go back and say, well, let's have a bloody conversation about it.
Yeah.
I don't remember ever seeing her suffer, but here's the thing. We can't tell if a woman's suffering. I used to think my mum was just an absolute cow at times. And I look back now and think, was that menopause? Was it perimenopause? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how they did it without like dishwashers and shit like that. Even that stupid little stuff, like they actually did it so much harder than we did it. I don't know how. Maybe we're better at talking. I think we're getting better at talking about things now.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's all right. That's life.
Yeah.
Speaking of life, no, but I think you're right. And I think there is kind of a movement. I actually think it's really extraordinary that, I often talk about this as well, and I wonder what your thoughts are. It seems to me that like the Me Too movement came along and it opened up the world for many conversations, not just abuse of women, although that's still fucking happening and, we still need to keep talking about it. Absolutely. But it allowed us then to talk about all the things as women that we've been restricted in talking about, if you like. And I do think that perimenopause, sexual health, periods, all of it, as you say, which was so ridiculously meant to be taboo, is suddenly getting talked about. And so it bloody should be. Women hold up half the sky, right?
Yeah, I think that when you can really sit down and get really angry about where women sit in the society, and then when you do arc up, then you're just told, you fucking lefty feminists and all this stuff, and I'm like, I was, and with age, and I'm learning more now than I've ever learnt in the last 12 months, and with age, I was at the supermarket the other day. And this bloke would have been, I don't know, early 60s, and he was talking to the checkout chick, and she was from Nepal, and he had a friend from Nepal. And then he said to her, I'm going to take a photo of you and send it to him because they were from the same village. And she looked really uncomfortable. And I said to her, and I would never have done this before, and I said, do you want him to take a photo of you? And she said no. And I just went mental. I wasn't even nice about it. I just said, mate, are you deaf? She said no. And he still was about to take a photo. I said, if you take that photo, I'm getting security. Like, I am not that person. I am not that person who's going to stir up shit, who's going to cause a scene, who's going to make waves. But honestly, if we don't, then that man thinks he can just take photos of random strangers and distribute them to whoever. Like, no, you can't do that, mate. Anyway, it was kind of nice. And I think that there is a braveness that you get when you do release that whole fear of causing a stir. And it's not even causing a stir, it's just doing the right bloody thing. And why should we have to do it?
No, I agree. And I think that's, that's the thing as well. I think this is one of the most beautiful things I found about aging, and I'm in my 50s now, and is this, you have less fucks to give, which means that you have more courage to basically, as you say, stand up for what's bloody right. And, I care less about what people think. When I was young, I probably had a really fierce sense of social justice as well. But back then I was actually called dogmatic, You know, you think about any word you can use for women who have an opinion, and I've heard it used about me. And I think as I get older, I'm like, I don't give it. Fuck you. I can, you know, it's the right thing to do.
And
You know?
I do look at women who, and it is a real spectrum, that whole thing. Like, it can start really small. And I'm not saying everyone has to be that bloody alpha woman who's just fearless and just making a little change in how you do it. But, you know, and a lot of people say, I don't give a fuck. Deep down, everybody does care. That's the thing. Deep down, you don't want to be a dick. You don't want to be that idiot. You do. Well, I think anyway that you don't want to be that absolute dick. But if you see something, you kind of have to say something now, because everybody else is trying to do it. I just think that, you know, and even I was so sensitive to other people's opinions, and doing what I was doing, writing on the internet and getting, you know, hate mail and all the rest of it. And I would just cripple me. And I'd go, this person who I've never fucking met, who could be anyone, says that I'm fat and ugly, and I am fat and ugly. And I want to look back on that girl now and just say, Kate, like, what? Why are you wasting your tears over this? Like, but you have to get to a point. I think it's easy to say, oh, you shouldn't give a shit and you should do this, and what everyone thinks of you is none of your business. But it's only when it really becomes meaningful to you, that all the talk in the world isn't going to make a difference. But now I honestly can tell you, you don't like me, that's absolutely fine. And that's it. Nothing. No justification, no explanation, no why. No, that's all right, because I don't like anyone. You don't like me, that's fine. That's
Yeah,
it.
wow.
End of conversation.
And what a brilliant bloody place to be, right, when you land there.
Yeah.
And you're right. I do think deep down we all care, but I do think it's a really it's freeing to get to a place where you care less about it, right? And you start caring more about, well, how do I feel about myself?
Yeah, and you always have to bring it back to that. It's like, you know, someone's a fuckwit. Why are they a fuckwit? Like, just don't even worry about that. They're like, that's fine. That's fine. Just bring it back. And the other thing that I've been doing a lot of work with is your ego, and how, you know, it is there to protect you, but it can also be really the world does not revolve around me, Sandy. I'm sorry to tell you. But, you know, and I used to do things and think things that people are looking at me and people are doing that. No, they're not. They don't give a fuck. And, you know, occasionally someone does. It doesn't matter. Really, you are in this bubble of trying to protect yourself, where you do waste all of that energy trying to make other people like you and everything else. And it's just like, oh, God, he could be fucked.
Yeah. It's exhausting, right? Exhausting. And I was raised very much like you and like a lot of women, I think, to be people pleasers. So, of course, what comes with that is, you know, we want people to like us, because if they don't like us, it means we failed somehow at pleasing them.
Yeah.
You know, it's a vicious kind of circle. It's, you know, and I've tried really hard to raise my children with a different thought process on that. That, you know, you don't owe the world. You don't have to please. You'll never be able to please everyone. Not everyone.
You can come in. Yeah, she can edit it, but just do what you need to do and go. Say hello to Sandy. Hang on.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hello.
Good. How are you?
Thanks.
That's Harry and Harry's girlfriend, Tamsin. They're on uni holidays now, so they're around a lot.
Nice, which is lovely.
Yeah, we love her.
My son just got married. Can you bloody
Oh my
believe
God.
it? I know. I'm like, how old am I? And yeah, he got married on Thursday.
Oh,
and
congratulations. I just want grandkids.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm excited.
Yeah, same. Okay, go.
Yeah, just bring this in the fridge.
Sorry, you're just going to have to edit this out.
Okay.
Just take a note of the time.
Yep, I am.
Where you go? Oh, hey.
Hi. Bye.
Nikki is coming over later.
Who?
Parkinson. She's in town.
Yay! Wow.
Bye. Sorry, wait.
What were we talking about? Yes, caring
I think
less.
we've covered that off.
We've covered that off. So, I want to talk to you though, really about the last 12 months
Yep.
of your life, because you've gone through. It's fair to say you've gone through a bloody lot,
Yeah.
and come out the other side. And I'm really interested, for people who haven't heard your story, about what happened, how you ended up where you did, and I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people, because we have a lot of listeners who've written to us about things like alcohol addiction, especially during COVID, about peri-menopause and alcohol,
Yeah.
about
Gosh.
about a lot of things. And I'm so enamored by your incredible strength to just go, fuck it, this is what happened and this is my truth. Because as I said earlier, I think in doing that, you will definitely, your story is going to resonate with a lot of women.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly am not and do not want to be the poster child for sobriety. So my background is always been a party girl, always been the last one standing, always been first up on the dance floor, and managed it. Uni is where you sort of start, and then I started my career, and it was just a normal sort of social drinker. Motherhood smacks you around the face. I think motherhood and the mummy wine culture is kind of, unless you're in it, you don't really understand how everything revolves around alcohol. Well, in my circles anyway. There was a lot of gin and tonic Friday afternoons, a lot of wine at the park, christenings, baby birthdays, everything was champagne, mum's nights out, all of that stuff. So I noticed there was a real dip in alcohol consumption there in my peer group. And then, normal drinking, normal social drinker, decent drinker. Well, probably what is classified as a heavy drinker. And then when I started getting anxiety, which is also something that a lot of us get, and I found relief in alcohol. I found that would stop my mind going. Did not know that it was actually making everything 10 times worse. So that carried on for a couple of years. I was self-medicating with alcohol, and drinking, a couple of glasses of wine every night, and that's how it starts. And then lockdown came.
Damn lockdown, my God.
And by this stage, I was in the throes of peri-menopause. It was all coming at me. I'd recently lost my dearly loved stepdad. It was just coming at me from all angles, and I had no coping mechanisms. I had none. Yeah. And so my coping mechanism was to just have drinks, because that would make all the bad feelings go away. It would knock me out at night, so I wouldn't lie in bed tossing and turning. And it really was it was the thing that never let me down. So yeah. I lent on that, really to the point where it very quickly became unmanageable. And I became really depressed and quite suicidal. And it was at that point, just over a year ago now, that I knew that wasn't me talking, and those thoughts weren't mine, and that was the alcohol telling me, and just confirming everything that I'd already suspected, that I was a loser, I was no good, I was worthless, people were going to find out that I'm a fraud, I'm no good at anything. And all of this has come from self-talk that had gone on for decades anyway. But it was like a pimple, so it was festering away, and it was just coming to the surface. So I had a moment of clarity, thank God, where I said, this isn't the life that I want. This isn't the life that because if this is it, I actually don't want it. This is shit. This was just getting through the days, drinking a bottle of wine at this point and going to bed, waking up, feeling shit, not sleeping, being really average at everything I was doing. Like just shit relationships with pretty much everyone. And slowly my world got smaller and smaller and smaller. Until as I said, I had a moment of clarity. My husband just said, we got to get you better. And I went, yeah, because this ain't working for me anymore. And I'm laughing maybe because, I'm trying to sort of break the tension in my head, but I just know now, having been to rehab, and I went twice, didn't take the first time, but again, I put myself straight back in. Because when I walked in there, it was basically like walking into a mother's group. Every single woman was like me.
Yeah, wow.
Every single woman in that room was mid to late 40s and just no coping skills. And then they were using alcohol or drugs in some case as their coping skill. And that can only last a very short time before that's not sustainable anymore.
Yeah, wow. And first of all, thank you for, as I said, for sharing that so honestly. I think it's just fucking powerful. I'm interested, thank you for sharing that you did get to a point where you felt suicidal. You don't have to give us a name, but who was it that you first reached out to in regards to that? Because, did you tell anybody about those thoughts initially?
It's very scary place to be. It's very scary place to be, and it is imperative that you tell someone because you're not in your right frame of mind. And you just don't want that voice to get so powerful that you start to agree with it. And so, yeah, I told my husband, and it was fairly obvious towards the end that I was in crisis. I've got a very good group of girlfriends who are like sisters to me. And it was kind of like, well, you're very unwell. I'd lost so much weight. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating. And as I said, it got me so quick in the end. It was quite frightening. But it wasn't, anyone could have said anything to you. The first time I went to rehab, I went because I just wanted everyone to get off my case. I didn't realize how serious the situation was. And I was like, I just go, just shut you all up. And when I got there, I started learning a little bit. Oh, right. Oh, maybe this. Came home, thought I'd got it, hadn't. And then that was when things had gotten really bad. That's when I took it seriously. And when I do talk to people and groups about, my experience, and a lot of people do contact me with friends or sisters or wives or husbands who are in the same situation, I'm like, you can't do anything. Until that person is ready, you can't do anything. You really can't. Well, you can put them in there and they can be safe and all the rest of it. But if you're talking about getting long-term, because it is a disease, if you're talking about getting over that disease, I don't think you ever get over it. I think you just learn to cope and manage. And it is so worth it because life is so much better. Until that person is ready to absolutely just admit that they can't go on. And the other thing to remember, and the other thing that I learned, is that with alcohol, because it is such a socially acceptable drug, and because you can get away with, abusing it for a long time, and you can see people in social circles or situations, someone might be known as always going on a bender or blacking out or having a spew, or it's all very funny and things like that. But it's adding blocks to a pathway that will change the actual I'm not going to go too much into the science of it, but I did become quite obsessed because I wanted to know why. And I think once you learn why, it's a lot easier to stop. The physical aspects of it is unpleasant, of withdrawal and going through changing your habits and all the rest of it. But it wasn't until I learned why I was doing it. It became easier for me not to ever do it again. Well, I'm hoping every day's a new day, and I don't ever say I'm never drinking again. I just don't. That to me that doesn't work. I'm never drinking again. Like, I'm not drinking today. Then tomorrow will
Yeah.
come and I will say I'm not drinking today. And I think that's a really good way to look at it as well, because I have trained myself for a long time to depend on this old friend to help me through the good and the bad times. And she's seen me through some great times, but you kind of romanticize your relationship with it and you forget all the absolute shockers that you've had. Not to mention the fact that as you get older, you don't metabolize it as much. The damage that you do to your body, your skin, like every single organ of your body is affected by it. I don't want people to think, oh, I don't really care what you think, but I don't want to say that alcohol is the devil, because most people have a very respectful relationship with it, and that's great. And there's some people that have a bad relationship. I want to talk to those people, because I know that someone is listening to this right now, and I know that someone's listening to this with a big glass of wine in their hand, and I know that that's not the first one they've had today, right? And I know that they've been thinking for a long time, I'm not going to drink tomorrow, or they'll wake up with a hangover and they'll go, right, that's it, I'm not going to drink till Thursday. And then 4 o'clock rolls around, and I know, because I was that person. And there's no point in like lying to yourself. If you don't have a problem with alcohol, you're not thinking about when you're having your next drink.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things that you talked about, which is so true, is during the course of COVID, how many women started to drink more because they were suddenly finding themselves in a really stressful situation. As it, we take care of people all the time, but suddenly to be with people 24/7 with no escape from that, as you say. But so you learn about the reasons why addiction can happen, which is powerful. But did you also, I guess I'm just interested, having not been to rehab myself, the tools, obviously, do you learn important tools on, as you said, how to cope with, because life will throw shit at us. So how do you learn to cope with the shit, I guess?
It's like a computer program. I never updated. So I had 25 years or 30 years of updates to run, because I was still stuck in a very juvenile way of coping with things, which was by not coping with them, by putting my head in the sand. You could ask any of my mates, I would run a mile from confrontation. I would be uncomfortable talking about deep feelings. I would hate, like, it was just very, very surface level relationships, because I was so afraid of letting anyone see me, because I thought so badly of myself. I didn't want anyone to see the real me, because I was like, it wasn't worth it. And that was my, my core value growing up, that in my head, which I created, was you're just not good enough. You're just not good enough. And so when I started doing these exciting things, and I was just thinking, God, well, they're going to find out. They're going to find out that you are like, and then what's going to happen? And I'm not the only one who has, and everyone has a different core value that they sort of think in their head. That's a very common one. Another common one is that everyone's leaves me. Everyone's going to leave me. So I think really diving into the psychology of the way our brain's just out to help, to protect us. It's not the enemy. It's very, very sneaky though. And what happens is that you actually change the pathways of your brain. And so I had to go back to the beginning. I had to go and undo like a whole heap of thought processes. So if it's alcohol, drugs, sex, gambling, chocolate, food, sugar, it's anything, right? It's just that mine happens to be alcohol. A lot of people have alcohol. A lot of people have different things. It's the dopamine hit that we're looking for. So you have a drink, you get the rush to your brain. I want that. That was good. I want more of that. same with sex, same with gambling, all of it. So unless, and that's the Band-Aid that you put on the wound, unless you take that Band-Aid off and look at the wound and work out why it is you need the Band-Aid on it and clean that wound, you're always going to have trouble with the addiction of, it's not your choice. If you think I choose to do that, do you think that was my choice? That's the other thing, is that people have this notion, you're useless, drunk and all this stuff. And I just think, yeah, because that's really winning at life. That's gold. Oh yeah, that's what I want to be when I grow up. Because you don't ever pick it. You don't ever say, this is how I want. And my whole, and I got to hang out and get to know people from all different walks of life, and I was having, dinner with ice addicts and things like that, and things that I'd never really, and I had my own preconceived notions of who these people were, but I was one of them. It's just that my addiction was alcohol and theirs was methamphetamine. But it's all the same thing. It's just that one thing that you're using to mask the pain. So you've got to address the pain. And it's an ongoing thing. I have to do something every day for to stay on this path. And I chose to really embrace that. And it's only now that I can say I'm actually not a bad person. I actually do have something to offer. I'm not a dickhead. And I like myself a lot more, and geez, it's a lot nicer place to be. It really is. It's so
And
much
you know
nicer.
what I love too is, as soon as we connected today, I said to you, God, you look great. And you know what? You really do, because, the last time that we chatted on this podcast, you, as you said, you'd lost a lot of weight. You said to me, I'm so tired. You were, and really now I realize you're probably in
You're
that group of
probably
all of that stuff.
sliding down that
Right?
sneaky bastard addiction.
Yeah, right. And
It's so sneaky. It's so incremental. That it's only when you are just about nearing crisis point that you realize, oh fuck. But just don't. You can't do it by yourself. That's one thing I want to tell everyone. You cannot do this by yourself. You can stay sober for 6 months, but unless you do the work, it's just going to keep happening. And every time it's happening, it's going to get worse. And then you will die. You will die. This disease kills people. And, and I am in a support group, and a month ago we were all joined up and someone didn't turn up.
yeah, wow. Yep. Yeah.
And it's just like, it kills people.
It does.
Again,
It
I'm
does.
talking to those people right now who are the problematic drinkers, not the take it or leave it drinkers, the ones who are using it as a crutch.
Yeah. I think what's really incredible that you raised before as well, a really important point, that you went to rehab and you thought everything's okay, I'm okay, and then came home and, as you said, it didn't take, but you went back.
Oh, straight away.
And I think that's such an important point too for people listening who are maybe like, I've tried and it hasn't worked, that you can always try again. You can just keep trying.
You just don't give up giving up. If you give up giving up, your time on this earth is really, really quite limited. And the time that you have is going to be miserable. So yeah, I just and I have had one relapse this year, one day, and I don't, I won't go into what happened. It was just so stupid. But a lot of the times people will do that and then go, oh well, I can't do this. But no, the next day I just rang my psych, I rang my GP, I went in, I said, this happened, and they went, the fact that you're here means that you're still willing. I was like, yeah, I know enough to know that's not where I want to go.
Yeah.
It's market research. I like to call it market research, just to make sure that I knew what I was doing.
But you know what? Brilliant that, as you said, it happened, but it doesn't define the next day or the day after that or the day after that, right?
If anything, it was a very good reminder. Since I've stopped drinking, my anxiety, of which I was medicated for, has gone. has
Wow.
absolutely gone. And this was something I lived with for a very long time. I sleep 8-9 hours solidly a night. Just those two things, mental health, A1, and just feeling awake and fabulous all the time. That alone is worth it to me. Everything else is wonderful. Like my relationships are great. Um, and I don't, and I'm coming off sounding like a bit of a Pollyanna here, but I've done the fucking work, and it's not easy. It's not easy, but oh god, it's so worth it. It's so worth it. So yeah, I keep thinking, and I used to do this when I was blogging. I'd always write to one particular person in my head, and I keep thinking to the woman who's sitting there now, probably just having a big old cry into her gin, that when she is ready, a good GP is the best place to start. It really is. You've got to tell someone, and you've got to go to your doctor, because it might take a couple of goes. It really does. And I'm no expert in it, but I know a lot more than I did this time last year.
Yeah. And I think it's that really interesting thing, as you say, about legalized stuff, like alcohol, like cigarettes, like whatever, right? As opposed to the apparently illegal stuff. You go, it's all the same shit.
It
It's
is.
all the
It's
same
just your
stuff.
choice of which
Right.
one is your comfort, and a lot of people it's sex. A lot of people and again, they're just chasing that endorphin hit because that feels so good.
Yeah.
And that's the addiction before it even becomes a physical dependency. It's that mental high that and as you lean more on your drug of choice, that threshold just gets higher, so you need more and more and more to get the same effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I had a fascinating chat on this podcast recently, actually, with Jenny Valentish, who's written this amazing book, which was Walkley nominated, but it's called Woman of Substances. And she combined her experience of being addicted to substances, alcohol, drugs, whatever. But she combined that with a whole lot of research into especially why there's not enough research being done on women
Oh, I
with
wonder
addiction.
why.
Right. Hello. And this is exactly what she was talking about, that anything to do with women's health, we were just talking about bloody menopause, peri-menopause, same. Anything to do with women's health is just basically shoved under the carpet and all the money goes elsewhere.
It's just outrageous.
Incredibly outrageous. So it's quite fascinating, but that's a really fascinating book too, if people want to have a read of that. Woman of Substances, because she does really talk about exactly that and how women, our brains are hardwired differently often, and why addiction is so prevalent amongst women in our age bracket, especially, Kate, right?
There is a huge spike in alcohol dependency, women 45 to 55, and guess where I'm right in the middle. It's like I'm a walking statistic. I am
right in the middle.
as I said, I'm just I really wouldn't change any of it. I mean, I'd rather not have had it, let's be honest, but I look back on it and I'm very grateful for it, because I think my life has like a meaning that it didn't have before. Like I look at everything so differently.
And that's bloody incredible. And the one, I want to talk about too, because you're sitting in front of the most magnificent painting. A painting, by the way, that you painted. It's extraordinary. I want to talk about that because this is almost like, this brilliant kind of new chapter in your life that came out of this horrendous period, right?
I know.
So tell us all about how the art started, and did you realize before that you were an extraordinary artist? I mean, you're a creative, you're a writer, you're all these amazing things.
Yeah. So I was lucky enough. I went to the first rehab place I went to. I just hated it. I'm very much sensitive to my surroundings and people, and I pick up. It's fucking exhausting on people's energies and whatever. And rehab, there's not a lot of huge big energy going on in there, but I just didn't like it. and the second place I went to was the most wonderful facility here in North Sydney. Not North Sydney. I'm just on the North Shore of Sydney, and part of the therapy is art. And so, everyone goes, I can't draw, I can't paint. I did it for the HSC, and I liked it, but I hadn't done it since I was 18. I hadn't picked up a paintbrush, and even then it was like, all the angsty teenage shit, metaphoric and, but I just started, and I think I it was frustrating the first couple of days, and I just didn't like it, and this is stupid, and like I don't know what to do, and everybody else was saying the same thing. And then one day I just thought, fuck it, like who cares if it's shit. And it was at that point that I just started really enjoying the process, and I started enjoying the colours. And then all of a sudden it was like when I was writing, I would leave my body. It was so weird. I would leave my body and go off into a different place. And then I would come back and read what I was like, that was a great sentence. I can't remember putting that sentence. And, I've worked out it's something called the state of flow you get into, and it's greater than any gin and tonic or any like marijuana cigarette or whatever. And I've become addicted to this thing called the state of flow. And it is really lovely. And I started getting it when I started painting. And
wow.
So I just started experimenting with color and shape and form and, composition. And so I started looking at tutorials when I was, tucked up in bed at night with the nurse coming to do checks on you every 2 hours, make sure you hadn't, opt yourself in the bathroom. And so I would just start to become quite, and looking at things. And all of a sudden I was looking at the flowers differently. I was looking at trees differently. I was noticing different shapes, different colors. And all of this stuff that was right in front of me I'd never seen before. And this all sort of went towards, and I can see, because I was thinking, what the fuck are you doing art for therapy? How stupid, how annoying. But it really was the thing that clicked for me. And so then it was just so relaxing, and I found it hard to relax. I used to use alcohol to relax. And all of a sudden, I was so relaxed doing it. And it also really helped me let go of that notion of perfection and what other people thought. And sometimes things worked out, and sometimes they were shit, and sometimes they were amazing. So all of this stuff that before I would be fighting against and criticizing everything, it was what it was. It is what it is. And it were really, I do look at it as in saving my bacon. It really did save my ass in a lot of ways. It's given me so much joy. I can't believe that people buy it. That is just wonderful for me. But it was a little bit like writing with me. It was amazing that people would read it. But that's not why I was doing it. I was doing it for me. And I do this for me. I love opening up a new big canvas and looking at colours and really thinking about, how am I feeling, or, what if we did this, and using texture and using that creative side of my brain that I had numbed for so long. I had, numbed and really had it shackled for all of these different reasons, and then just drowned it on top with booze. And it was finally free, and it was really just bloody beautiful. Love it. And I love it. I love it.
And
I'm so lucky.
Oh, and how bloody extraordinary, because one of the things I talk a lot about, given that my platform's for women 40, 50, 60 and beyond, is this magical thing that happens when women, in our age bracket suddenly go, I've just found something I'm in love with, and I didn't know that was ever going to happen again. And it's a love affair.
Art. There's so much.
Anything.
Gardening, cooking, podcasting. It's anything that gets you out of your brain is just to give your little brain, who works so hard, is looking out for danger. It's looking out to keep you safe. It's telling you lies sometimes because it doesn't want you to upset you. But when you get out of it, it gives it a rest, It's like, okay, and it recharges. It's bloody marvellous. Everyone have a go. It can be knitting. It can be fucking like paint by numbers. It doesn't matter. Once you're sort of out of that brain, keep going. It's just so nice. It's like natural high.
Yeah, I 100%. And for me, that sort of came for me when, yes, I loved the blogging and the writing and whatever, but creating a magazine and creating a platform was like something I was like, I always wanted to do it,
Yeah.
but how the hell do you do it? And when I stopped thinking about the how, I had no idea. You just do it, right?
Yeah.
What happens, as you said, this podcast is my happy place.
Yeah.
Getting to talk with so many incredible women.
I mean,
And
it's
as you
just
say,
a bonus that
beautiful.
people, are invested in you. I mean, your interviewing is incredible, and the guests you get on are amazing. And, people are interested in that. And that's just a bonus for you.
It's a bonus.
Because this is a creative outlet for you. So I just think, my phone's about to die.
Okay, well, we're nearly finished anyway, but I just want to say thank you so much because you're bloody incredible.
I'm very uncomfortable with that. I get a lot of that. You're an inspirational and I'm not. I'm just so not. There's like a billion of me out there. There is a billion of me out there. I just got a bigger mouth.
No, you're incredible though, because as you say, while there may be a billion, there's no one quite like you, and you have managed to create an extraordinary community by being honest and open and sharing your life with other people. Not an easy thing to do, but you are brilliant, and I really appreciate your time and thank you for your honesty. Your wisdom is incredible. I think you're great.
I'm a work in progress, my friend. I think we all are, and I think that's the exciting that's the exciting part. I think the best is yet to come for us.
Absolutely. Well, I'll be sharing all of your links, Kate, so people can check out your amazing art, by the way, and follow along and possibly join your Facebook community if they're into it. They should. Yeah, and thank you so much for your beautiful time today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Good Girl Confessional podcast. The Good Girl Confessional podcast is brought to you by WB40, Women Beyond 40 magazine. Available now at WB40.com. The Good Girl Confessional podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to quality podcasts. We're also now available on YouTube. We chat with really interesting women about their hard-won wisdom, but it really helps us if you can subscribe, like, and share the podcast. Thanks so much for your support. Bye for now.